Watercolour painted on a prepared canvas. Instructions to prepare a stretch canvas can be viewed in my video entitled Preparing a Canvas for Watercolour. The requirements I've got to paint on the canvas, I'm using a HB pencil, an Escoda number 12 and 6, a 1/2 inch square shader, a small and large liner or rigger brushes. So that's the brushes I'm using. The colours that I'm going to be painting with are all Winsor & Newton colours. There's Winsor Yellow, Raw Sienna, Burnt Sienna, Cobalt Blue, French Ultramarine and Endanthrine. The canvas first of all needs to be sanded. Before I do that, I've just actually done a little bit of a drawing here just to show you that you can't see it a great deal, but just to show you that that drawing can be rubbed off with a rubber at any time that you want. So don't be afraid to draw in your canvas. So that is easily rubbed off. So in your drawing, don't draw too dark, but it's okay to rub out on it. Just a little bit of a light sand, because after it's dried, it still will have a little bit of a rough surface. Just brush that off with a tissue. Starting with the sky, always starting in the background when you're ready to paint. First of all, I'm going to finish off a little bit of the drawing that I had. I had just a little bit of a mountain top there, a little bit of an area coming down through across here. A little bit over here is a smaller range of some sort of rocks, could be anything through there, and then continue on through the mountains. Over here I've dropped out of the landscape. Usually I go up to go out of a landscape rather than dropping out, although I don't mind what that looks like, but just parts where something comes into the landscape. In the foreground I'm not going to draw anything, because sometimes an artwork is better off when it evolves rather than a complete drawing on it. First of all, I'm going to work on the sky, and I'm going to put some of the darks in here, and I'm rubbing on the side of that brush with water, and that just allows me to start putting in some colour in through there, and it's going to have some grey in through there. So I'll bring the grey over to here. That's very, very blue. Just balance it out with a little bit more of the brown. Just damp the brush and skate it across the artwork as well, and that can come out to the side. I'm going to actually put acrylic around the edge of this. I don't really want to paint over the top of that, over the edges of it. Just come down through there. I can bring that down as just some darks in through. If I don't like what I've done, I can just add some water. That will still change that slightly, but still I'll be working with a relatively dry brush. So even if it's wet there, I can come over here and damp it on the tissue and dry it out, and then put it back into the area that's wet, or it will leave some white as well where I've left that. I'm just going to come down to about there, and so I've got a darker corner to the canvas. I'll come back to that in a moment, but I'll go over the other side and bring that in on the other side of the canvas. Just depends what colour I want here. I can get a brown grey, or I can get a blue grey, or in the middle I'll end up with a black. And so I haven't wet this side, so I'll show you what that looks like if I don't wet it. It'll be a lot darker with it being dry. Just bring it out to the edge, bring it in across the artwork. Now I'll wash the brush and take care of the edges of that paint. And so there can be soft edges, hard edges, edges coming down into the sky. Just making sure that I change it right to the edge of the board. So now you've got two entirely different looking areas. This one now can have more paint. and that will drop in more darks in through there, just up into the corner, and then I've got light as well. Now I wash the brush and work into the edges of that, and so that will bring some colour down softly into the artwork, so it's not just all just sitting up there. Just be careful of edges. It's got a few bubbles there, but that's all right. Working on a watercolour canvas is excellent for the fact that you can actually lift paint off very, very easily. Probably even a little bit easier than paper, because of the fact that it's not actually going into it like paper. It's sitting on the top, but it's still accepting watercolour. The colours in the sky now are different, so what I'm going to do is bring some more blue in over here and just put some more blue into the sky there. A little bit of blue, a little bit down there. And now I'm going to come in round the bottom and start to get this to have, there's some in the back of the brush there that's just coming down into the blue. That won't hurt. And the sky down here where I'm getting down lower will be very, very light, and it'll be very light grey. So I'm just bringing some lines in through there, so that'll disappear down behind the mountains. Just has a little bit of grey. Down through there, and now I'm going to work on the blue that's going to come in through here, and I'm going to leave a cloud coming across the actual canvas. In doing that, it makes it look like there's more distance. So for that, I need cobalt blue. I'm going to pick up cobalt blue and put it there and have it quite strong, and then I'll be adding water to it down here to get a softer blue. And so I can keep adding water, but if I don't have a strong blue to start with, I've got nothing much to work with. So I'll start to dry the brush a little bit, start in the darker blue and see what I've got, and bring some clouds in. So that'll make a cloud through there in the white, and so I'll just touch the edges of this and make it go into the actual grey. So it's got blue down the middle of the canvas, and then the next colour is coming in through here. So that'll be a cloud in through there, clouds. I'll wet some of it so that I don't know what's going to happen. That's a better idea. If you wet it and you don't know what's going to happen, that's even more interesting. That'll just have shapes in through there, shapes down through here. Now I'm just going to wet it, because then I'll get more interesting bits and pieces happening through there. A little bit drier in the blue. That'll bring the blue stronger up the top of the actual canvas. White, back into the blue, coming down through here. Don't want too much down through there. And so that eventually will look like there's clouds up through there. When I come back, take sections out, play into those clouds, remove paint, let that just sit on there, bring it into that grey a little bit more. You can see that it's easy to move. It's probably easier than people really want it to be. That'll actually come down through, come back up through there. That'll be wet edges, dry edges, clouds. Just dry the edge of that one. It's very blue in there, so I want to try and match that. I don't really like the bubbles too much. It's got a few bubbles in it, but they'll eventually sort of start to come out when it dries a little bit. So I'll go back and check for bubbles. Don't mind that. That's all right through there. Take out the top edge of that. That will give me a cloud. So you're looking for top edges. You're looking for those top edges and then bottom edges. Clouds sort of have a streaky effect through there as well. So I've got it streaking that way, and I've also got it streaking back the other way, so that it's got part of it happening. And now you're starting to see some sort of clouds and softness and darkness. I can actually come up into this section here and take some out, just to show you how easy it is to take out colour. I'm not really happy with taking the colour out there, so I'll put some back. Just put that back in there. Looked better when it had clouds there. All right, so moving down to the next section of the artwork, it'll be very light in the background. So I've got a light bluey grey. It's more blue than it is anything else, and that will be just the shading and that. Now, while you've got a colour that raw, it's a good idea to put a little bit more back in the browns back into it, just to sort of soften it a little bit. And that'll be the back clouds, black mountains, so they'll start to go in. Now with that amount of pencil on there, they'd have to be a lot darker than that. So I'm just going to put a little bit more of the colour in, get it to be a darker colour. I'll put some indethrin in it. Indethrin will give it a different blue. And so these are going to be darker now simply because I got so much pencil on there. Okay, so I'll just pick up the pencil lines and I'll work with that later. This one was up higher, coming down in through there. Now I'll come back and work into those. So if this one's up in behind here, it would be a lot lighter. And I'll just get it up there lighter, but I'll come past with the darker ones later. That one's a bit pointy for being that far back. Bring a light down there. That'll just go into the foreground here. That will disappear in a minute when I put some more paint on. And so I've already started to get the mountains on there, but I need to keep working. I've got the one here that what I'll do is go around that at the moment and keep that one. And the rest will be very light out here. I've got almost all water on my brush just to bring colour in through there, and it's very light. That'll disappear into the edges. That, when I put water on it, will lighten it, although I don't want it to be lighter. I want it to be darker later. But I'll just keep working in that. And so now it's got a lot of water on it, and it doesn't really like that to have a lot of water, but I'll come back to it. I'll let it dry slightly, and I'll go into the raw sienna, a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of cobalt. That'll make a greenish sort of a colour. I don't want it that green. I want it more just in a countryside sort of colour, so it needs to have more raw sienna and a little bit of the other colours in it, which is the brown. And that will just give me a dirty sort of a colour to come in through here and get something on the landscape. That'll take that edge out of that paint that was already there and still keep coming down. So just in strokes it will form something on the landscape. You can leave some light there if you want to, but it's just starting to get something happening in there. This can go up higher in through here. Don't have it all on the one level, but the mountains will fix this in a minute when they start coming down in through there. That could disappear back up in behind there. That would make it look like there was more distance into the mountains in that way, that you get something else happening if you went in behind those. And so now I'll go back to the sky and take care of my bubbles. Just sort of brush them out. Just a couple of bubbles. And then coming back into this section. Now this will be dry. So it's paint without water in it. Just into a darker sort of a colour. There's not much water in that. And so that's going to be the thing that's going to make these stand out. So if there was a mountain there, it would be that strong. If there's a mountain over here, and it wouldn't come in at the same place, it would come differently through there. So I'll just keep brushing until I get some sort of form in those mountains. Back over in here, you've got very light mountains in the back, but this needs to be darker in the foreground. So I'll just get a couple of sections on that. That can come in behind this now, so I'll just keep working on it. In through here, it's got something happening there, but I need more information on that. It's too big an area just to be sitting there like that. This is coming up higher, coming across and down. Now it's got something through here. Again, not that happy with what's happening there, so that needs to change. I'll just roll the brush through that. Okay, so back in the background here, let's go back here. We need something to take us back into the distance. Something in here to go back into the distance. Just be careful it doesn't get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you've got a huge scene. So again, I'll keep working back into the foreground now. Coming forward, I've still got the area here that's going to be in a browner sort of a tone. That can come in through there and just get something else in through there for the landscape. That can be even higher than what's there to start with. I'll just leave that with just shape, a lot of bubbles. Take out the bottom of it, and I'll start to work down through here. It'll get a little bit stronger as it comes forward. Just different sections in through there of colour. That's all that is. Could become a little bit browner as it comes forward as well. A bit warmer as you come to the foreground. Just colour. Okay. Somebody putting bottles in the bin next door. Okay, now it's time to work in behind things to get them to stand out in the foreground, whereas in the background it gets softer as it goes back. I'm just going to take some paint off that. That will leave me with some light and dark in that area there. That was behind it, but it's smaller, so I'm going to bring it in front of that. Just keep working. The ones in the front are getting darker again, so they need to be darker. I'll start to get some of the brown mixed in with it that will change the colour slightly, and that will change it again. So I've got the mountain through here. It's got a light on it there. It can have a little bit of information on this mountain now. Just a little bit of something on top of it that changes the top of that mountain, just in brush marks. Something in behind somewhere here where there's nothing going on, so I'll just come into that and bring something into there a little bit darker. This isn't a scene, by the way, it's just being made up. I can come up higher here and come in behind that. And now you're starting to see some bits and pieces starting to happen. This canvas, when it's finished, needs to be sealed. It needs a product, a matte sealer on it, because it is a watercolour and it won't last if it doesn't have something to protect it. Coming back down through here, just going to come in and do something down there. Don't know what it is, but just something to soften that off. And so in through there now, you've got a really rugged sky. You've got bits and pieces coming in through here. You also need something to come in through here also to divide this up. Remember, I come back up through there with the green. I'm going back there to lighten that in the distance and see if I can get through here and back out of that area. Back out of that. Didn't mean to do that. Just something going in there. And what that'll do is give me an escape out through there into the distance. So just a couple of bits that will give me some light into the artwork. Back into the foreground, the grass and everything can get a little bit greener now. So I'm coming into Windsor Yellow and Ultramarine. That'll give me a muddy green, but it also will give me something to change the colour of these areas through here. So I've just brought the colour in through, just something down through it that way. That's too far. It needs to be shallow brush marks to make it look like there's something happening in the countryside. Okay, now in the foreground, I could have rocks. I could have anything in here. I've got a white edge through there, and that doesn't look like it's doing anything for the artwork. Just come right to the edges. So I could have rocks in the foreground. So if I had rocks, I'd have some really strong darks, and I'd have a bit of a surface through here. A little bit of blue in that will make it into a blacky colour. That'll give me something that, a foreground. Okay, so you need background, middle ground, foreground. That's starting to get something into here, and also that will appear over this side so that I've got something over there as well. A lot of brown paint, and I'm painting with it raw. So it'll go on there and just along the front of the artwork. The next thing that's going to come into there will be trees. And of course the light's coming through the top section behind here. It has a very blue patch there, and I think basically I need to match that somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is come back to the cobalt to have it a little bit damp but not too wet, otherwise it'll go again and I won't have much colour. And I'm just going to bring it into here and just get some blue back underneath that, leading into that, and then down onto the top of some other cloud. The tops of clouds have shapes to them, and that's brought that colour in through, although it has lots of bubbles. The next lot of bubbles I'm going to actually take off is down here. Again, if I want any light on the edge of anything through here, I can still bring light down through. If the light's shining on there, we might get some light down that side, even though it's got something else happening on it. It's just particularly made up. There's nothing really there. This, to me, is the best way to paint when you've got no particular idea, only the fact that I'm working with light and dark. That's all I'm doing. Light and dark through here and bursting bubbles. I'll let that dry for a little bit before I come back to it, but it has that really bright coming through the sky now, and that will lead it back into here. So you've got wind in the sky, you've got different things going on. It looks interesting. Okay, so back in now to form trees, and if the actual foreground here was too strong, I could use the square shader to actually brush through there and create trees. So the trees that are on this side are not going to be very big. They're going to be just gum trees coming up through here. And that will allow me to take out the paint off that area. Even though I don't need to, I could paint over it and it still would work. Don't have a very nice edge on here, so I'll just get it to get the white off the edge of the canvas. And now I'll start with the riggers. And so these are the smaller trees, and I've got the smaller brush. I could use the bigger brush on the bottom section of it, and so the trees are going to be in the darks, just in the browns and dark colours. I've got more brown than I've got any other colour now, and I'll start to drag those up. Now I usually do trees upside down, and so I will do that upside down because that's the general idea of trees that I actually do a lot of the time. And that's the darker side of the tree, so I'll start on that side. So I'll pick up the paint again. It can have light and dark on it, but I'll work that in a minute, and the tree will come up through here. It's getting thicker, so it's thicker at the bottom. Has another branch that didn't make it there. Comes up through here, and you'll see as I dance the brush around, it actually paints better for me coming towards me upside down. And so that brush dances across the actual canvas. Now it can't be lonely, it can't have one tree. It has another tree here beside it that's smaller, coming out of the picture, and another one basically probably on this one. Actually, it looks like a lonely tree. It looks like it's got one trunk that would have probably split and come up for another part to it. So now I've got two trees there. I'll turn it around and have a look and see what I've done, because I don't know what I've done. And so what do I need to take off? I've got the light side. So I'm coming back to the light side and just getting some light off. Taking some light off around, just around the tree. So it's got a bit of a pattern on the tree trunk rather than just a straight trunk. Now it needs some greenery on that tree. And so I actually can get another smaller tree coming into the picture again sideways back this way. Now I'm looking at it, just in through here, just to come into the actual artwork. So it's not lonely, it's got bits and pieces of rubbish. I'm doing rubbish now, just brush marks. That's all that is. And some greenery. So the greenery will be ultramarine, Windsor yellow, and a little bit of indenthrine. Indenthrine gives you a really nice colour to the trees because they're in a little bit of dark area through here. So I'll start over here on the darker area and just push that into the actual canvas. Just little bits of touches on the canvas. It's not dry enough, so if it's not dry enough, I'll just touch the brush on the tissue and dry it out. That's a better look to it. Not everywhere, just in part, because this, as I said, is pushing that out of the way. Probably didn't mean to take out that actual section between that, but it happened. Down in through here, so the tree could have a different sort of colouring. It could have a little bit more of a yellow effect on it, so I'm using more yellow than anything else here. Push it into the actual paper. Some softer parts, some darker parts. I'm wetting the brush now and I'm going to drop in some of the darks. So now you've got some solid parts to your trees as well, even though it's doing dots. Don't really want dots. Just touch it again, get that to move. But the lifting capacity is just huge. So you're working with drier paint, that'll get you a better finish, sorry. Down over the top here just a little bit. Don't want to take out that background completely. So I'll just get into some more raw sienna now. I've got raw sienna. Different coloured tree. Not that happy with him. He needs to disappear. Just go. Not that happy that he's on the mountain there either. It'd be better if something was behind that and you couldn't see. So I'll just get some of the other green and just in through there. Just a little bit in through. Just a little bit in through there. Just brush marks. That's all it is brush marks. I'm not trying to create anything much there. Now up through here we'll have a much larger tree. And so the much larger tree will have some darks and lights on it, working in the greys, okay, it'll be grey. And so if I wanted to draw it, I could draw it with a rigger with water on it. I could actually draw the tree coming up through here, leaning in a little bit to the artwork, coming up through and up out of the artwork. This is a much bigger tree. Comes down and takes that off. Okay, that's done something down there that looks all right, even though I've got the edge on this that I'm not happy with. But that will be a matter of just coming along later and just putting some water over that, and that'll just drag it down and cover that edge. Leave the white edge on that tree, and that will actually get that to come out of it. All right, so now I'm going to go back to upside down because I've got the idea where that tree is going to go. And with the little bit of water on the brush, I'll start to come, I can't do that over the camera, can I? I can probably get round that way. Okay, so this is going to have some dark on there. Stop and start. Stop, start. Get that to come up through there. Now, in stopping and starting, I get some ability to actually make something different on the tree than the other trees over this side. The tree can come up and separate and keep going up through there. And you notice it's going across the actual canvas, which is making it a little bit more interesting. Turn it around and see what I've got. And remember, I've got the light side still with the light. So I'll come back with a tissue in my hand this time, and the tissue will dry the brush, and that will allow me to get a stronger edge in the tree, to come back round through there, get strength down through the tree there, some strength. Now that's dirty, so I need to wash it and dry it again. Now I've got the edge of the tree coming up. The edge of the tree can go out to that edge, so I've left a dark patch on it, up through here and out. That's the branch coming off the tree, so from there I'll work on the tree itself. And that means the rigger, maybe the bigger one to start with, but then I can go down to the smaller one in a minute. So I've got the bigger rigger. It's got a nice mark on it there, but I don't want to touch that, so I'm going to work from here. Work that out. Bring that out, and it's dry, but that's okay. Something probably from the light side, and what I'll do is wet the tree. Wet the tree with a clean brush. This brush is very dirty. Wet the tree around about there maybe. And when I lay this down on the tree, it should actually allow some of that paint to stay on the tree, which it did. And so now I've got a dark section on the tree coming in with that branch coming out of the tree. So if it doesn't, if it keeps going too far, I'll actually take some light off it. But that's something that you can do. It's actually gone too far, I think. I'll just take it back to the edge of the tree. So now it's actually separated from the rest of the tree. Does it need to go out further? Probably. It would look like, if I went straight past it, it would look like it's coming from the other side of the tree. I don't think this tree needs a lot on it. It does need to be whiter at the bottom because that's actually going back over and coming back. So I can still get more light out, anchor it onto the actual ground. Take out some of that. Okay, this is very, very solid, so I can actually come up through there and just get some light back through that. You don't ever want to lose your light in a watercolour. You need to get something showing that it's there. That sentence probably didn't make sense to you, but you need to actually see it with light, because once you lose that light, you've lost the artwork. Okay, back to the very, very strong darks. I'm going to come back here and darken some of it, especially over that section. Back up through here. So I'm just getting back to the darker edge of the tree, just to get something else on there. And possibly down the bottom here, could be a little bit stronger in the bottom section, just there. And so that accentuates the light and dark. When you say, people will say, oh, a tree can't do that. I've seen a tree do absolutely everything. I've seen its branches look like they're going the wrong direction. All sorts of things. Okay, so now it's time for a little bit of greenery. It would have some greenery on this tree. And so Winsor Yellow and Ultramarine and a little bit of Endethrin to get it darker. It'll be darker on this side. Make it go off the palette, off the actual surface. A little bit down through here, just to show that there is a top on the tree. Good idea to let that go. That's too wet. You see, if it's too wet, it won't hit on the surface and do some light and dark. That can come over the edge of the tree as well. Basically doesn't need much else on it, but it's very lonely. So it needs something else with it, needs other trees with it. And I'll go back to the browns of the other side. Otherwise, we've got black and we've got brown, and that doesn't work very well. So we're going back for some more brown trees. So they'll come in through here, drop behind it. That's something that very few people do, is to come behind something to create the distance. Probably another taller tree up through there. Get the strength of the trunk. Don't like that. When I actually do that, I really don't like it, but that'll have something on it now. Simply because that happened, that where I don't match up with the actual branches, where they don't sort of get together right. Okay, now you're looking into the distance on this poor little canvas. It's well overpainted, but it's been fun. Back to here for some light down the edge of the tree that way. The edge of that one that way, although it's almost behind. Looks like it's coming off this one, which is not a bad idea. It looks like it's off there if I bring it round there and take the bubbles off. Not sure about that little bit there, but that's all right. I'll use the smaller brush to just actually take a little bit of light off that. That'll make it lesser noticeable on the actual artwork. So there can be some more greenery, and I'll see if I can get this dry enough to get it to actually do some shading, which is, I find it easier on paper to actually do the foliage, but let's see what we can do, because now it's very dry. So you'll just get parts of that. Probably get rid of that. Join some up. Don't want it with just patches of foliage in places and not anywhere else. A little bit over that. That's out in the light, so it's lighter. Okay, so what else needs to happen? Could have more in the landscape, but will it take away from the trees and the foreground? If I go right across the page, I've blocked it out, even though I wouldn't mind having more trees. But it could have something softer in through here that's much lighter. I'm just going to get some very light grey and just bring some rubbish in through there, just to come out of the picture. There's nothing much else there. That's water on that, so that might even cauliflower, which wouldn't be a bad idea. I could improve the rocks in the front just here and just get some strength in through there. People ask, how do you know when an artwork's finished? All right, so this artwork will go up somewhere where I'm sitting, and I'll look at it for quite some time. I can always come back to it with a watercolour. I'm never frightened to come back to a watercolour, but that's the way that I then can tell whether I need something else done on it. And now I'm fiddling, so I'll stop fiddling. The other thing I need to do is get something out of these trees at the top. They're way too dark and too much paint on them. That doesn't go well. That'll settle them down on there. And then you've got the top of the trees. Using acrylic paints, rich gold, Prussian blue and white. These will be used to make a soft green to paint around the edge of the actual canvas. I'm using a bristle brush and I've mixed a soft green. That can be painted around the edge. I can also change it to be slightly blue as I actually go round to the sky. I don't really want it to be green all the way around. That wouldn't work. So with this brush, I'm just going to pick up just a small amount of paint, turn it round on the side, move it out a fraction actually, it's looking too close. That's better. And start to paint round the edge. And so it doesn't need a lot of paint, it just needs to come into the picture to hide the white between one section and the other. So I'm not putting it on yet, on around the edge, up to the actual painting, because I'll wait and see how much I need to come over the edge. I don't want it to go in and smother the watercolour. So that's painted on there. And then I'll turn it around so that now I can come in onto the edge and just see how much I need to just feather over that edge, just in some places. Come into the edge a little bit more there, and then I'll run my finger down that just to soften that edge so that you don't really see which surface sort of joins. Now I'll come around the edge, around this side, and start to get the green on here where the trees are. That can be green. It doesn't have much water in it, otherwise it would be uncontrollable. We're getting to the sky, so round the edges here to make that green, so that if you see any of that, just bring it in where the trees are. You won't know what the difference there is. And then I'm coming into the blue area, so I'm going to pick up the Prussian blue, just moving around. I've got a little bit more Prussian, and if it's too dark, I'll put it in with the other colour. And so now it's changing into a bluer tone. That'll come in through there. You won't even notice it as it changes colour, but it will look better if it's got the blue coming in there. See if I can drop it down a little bit. Just keep painting. Add the Prussian. Bring that over here actually so you can see that. Picking up just a little bit of Prussian. Put it in with that colour. Make it into a bluer green. Drop it down a fraction. Maybe more of the green in that to make it move a little bit better. Got a hair coming out of my brush that needs to depart. And pick it up again and start to paint the rest of it in through here. Now notice I haven't gone that close to the edge yet. That'll come back the other way so I can see what's happening. It's into green, so I can go back into the greens now. Could get a little bit of blue up there, but I'm not going to. And around the edge. Now that's acrylic paint, so the brush would go stiff. Because I'm a watercolourist, I don't use a lot of acrylics, but I do use them when I need to, just to finish things off. So now I can have a look and see what I've actually created. I've got a little bit of a gap there where it's coming over, so I'm going to change that to be quite blue. Just bring the blue over with it. And so now it's blue, not the white edge. That'll go in a minute. Back over here, there's a little bit of an edge there. Just enough to take the edge off so you're not seeing that. Now I've left that just a little bit there so that I can just rub with my finger into the paint and just get it to just come over and take that blue edge, the white edge, out of the actual frame. I noticed around here there was a little part there that was missed, so I'll come around there and just touch that up, getting too close to the camera. Okay, so now it has a really nice edge on the actual canvas, because I just don't like where you lose a lot of your picture if you come right over the edge. So that'll be the completion of the canvas. The next thing that I will do with the canvas, I also do it if I'm using salt on a watercolour. I use the matte spray, Microdor spray, to actually seal it. Because it's a watercolour, it will not go on your walls and stay relatively okay unless you put a spray of that on. Also, I spray the back of the canvas. I notice sometimes the canvases can spoil on the back, so I do the front and the back with the spray.